Aloha, this is my presentation on my weeding project that I did at Kekaulike High School. This is part of my Library Science 5952, my capstone project, November 2022. Here's my table of contents letting you know what my presentation will be about. I'll be introducing myself and the school. I'll be discussing some of the key findings from the literature review that I did. I'll be connecting this project to the American Association of School Library Standards and explaining my rationale for the project. I'll explain the 3 stages of the project as well as my outcomes and reflection. So let me begin by introducing myself and my school. My name is Layla Popata, and this is my 16th year teaching and my 4th year as the librarian. King Kekaulike High School is located on the island of Maui. We have around 1,200 students in grades 9 through 12. We are a Title I school, so for the past 2 years, over 50% of our students get free or reduced lunch. We're also a very ethnically diverse school, with 72% coming from minority populations, and about a third of the students identified as Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, a third as Asian, Filipino, and we also have some Hispanic students. Our library is open every day from 7:15 to 3:15, and it's very popular with an average of 300 to 400 visits per day by students. So my key findings from the literature review. The first says that weeding is an integral part of maintaining a collection. So librarians cannot just add books to a collection, but they also must deselect. I also found that weeding is a task that frequently creates anxiety and doubt and is avoided until necessary. And this was my own experience that I could identify with. I really was reluctant to weed, and I definitely avoided doing weeding until this project. And then one of the reasons that people don't like to weed is that there's weeding takes a lot of time, and there's other projects maybe that are more appealing that librarians would rather put their attention to. So luckily there is a manual, which is the library standard. It's called the Crew Manual. It's from 2012, and it gives the reasons why a librarian should weed, and I'm going to give you those 6 reasons. It saves space, so that was one of the main reasons that I needed to weed. It saves time because you don't have to be moving through so many materials if you're looking for something. It makes the collection more appealing because you have up-to-date and current and materials that are in good quality. It will enhance the library's reputation by having only quality materials on the shelves. It will help the librarian keep up with collection needs. As you weed, you can really see what's been popular and what hasn't been, and also helps provide valuable information to the librarian about the collection strengths and needs. Maybe where there's holes in the collection, etc. So there's a formula that comes with the Crew Manual. It's the publication year and the circulation rate, so how long has it been on the shelf, and then musty. Musty is a way, is it that you can look at the material and see, right? Is it misleading? Is it ugly? Is it superseded? Is it trivial, irrelevant, or elsewhere? So my connections to the American Association of School Library Standards is Curate, and according to the AASL, resources in the collection should be frequently reviewed for scope, age, and condition in accordance with the plan's provisions for weeding and removal of physical items that are out of date, infrequently used, and excessively worn. So that goes back to the publication, also circulation, and excessively worn would be the musty standards. So the justification for weeding, and this is Crew, is a collection that is, you want a collection that is vital, relevant, and useful. So my personal rationale for this project was it needed to be done. I was running out of space, especially with additions to my collection and new furniture. And this was also an effective way for me to really get to know my collection, my circulation rates, the physical state, and my current holdings. You can see the books, the picture of my circulation desk. Those are new books coming in. So I had continually added to my collection, but I had not been removing books. So I started with analysis, and I pulled up reports and looked at how many items I had and what the publication dates were. For my reference section, I had 773 items with an average publication of 1995, which is almost 30 years ago. And then nonfiction, I had over 9,000 items, and the average publication was even older. After that, after I did my analysis, then I did outreach to my staff. I wrote my staff and my admin, letting them know the project that I was going to be embarking on, letting them know the criteria, and then giving them a chance to give me any feedback before I started, and also let them know that materials would be available if they wanted to come and see any materials or if they needed any materials for their classroom libraries. And then I began with my reference. The reason I began with reference is because I wanted to use the shelves in the reference section to display my graphic novels and manga. Another reason I started with reference is because I had never seen a student actually use a reference book or ask me to help them find information in the reference section. So I really felt like this was an outdated area. There were textbooks that teachers had put there as a study center, but students weren't using them. There was encyclopedias that were very old. So that's where I began. You can see the almanacs from 2011. Um, so in my reference, I did make a huge reduction, 75% reduction, and that was, some of the books were beautiful, but they just were outdated. Some of them contained incorrect information. Country borders were different, names of countries were different. So I had to really be aggressive in my weeding there. And then from there, you can see I went to my 0 to 100 and the Dewey Decimals, and then my 100 to 200. What I found in my 0 to 100 in the Dewey Decimal, that's your general knowledge, information, and computers. I went from 211 to 127 titles, which is a 35% reduction. There were a lot of computer materials that were very outdated. And so those needed to be removed and were easy to make those decisions on using the crew guidelines. My most popular books from this section are the Ripley's Believe It or Not and the Scholastic Books of World Records, which were outdated, but I added to my most recent book orders because I could see that those materials are popular. They just needed to be updated. So that was a way that I got to know my collection through this weeding process. The 100 to 200 is philosophy and psychology. I went from 258 titles to 186, which is a 28% reduction. What was interesting here is that I had 24 books on cloning. So when I dug a little bit deeper, I realized and I found out that Dolly the sheep was cloned in 1996. And so many of the books were from the late 1990s. So you could see how this like hot, interesting topic. At that point, the librarian ordered all these books, but things have changed so much and then since then. So the materials were no longer current and I was able to weed those. So where did the weeded materials go? Well, the reference, you can see here, the reference material that I did keep, I ended up cataloging them not as reference, but as nonfiction. And then I was able to put them back into the nonfiction collection. And then some of the books I was able to give to the Maui Friends of the Library, but not that many because they didn't want outdated materials, or you could see some of the damaged materials that they wouldn't accept. But what did I do is, well, before they could be removed, I needed to remove them from our library system. So I had to black out the spine labels and the item ID labels and write discarded so they wouldn't find their way back. But we have a great program at our school called Workplace Readiness. And so when I would have a cart of books that were ready to be discarded, two of the students would come over from Workplace Readiness and they would wheel it over to their an area where they have like a production of paper shredding. So here you can see that they are weighing 7 pounds of materials and they're putting into the shredder and then they're putting into those bags, and that's to be used for packing material for our local floral business. So then I went ahead and made my plan after I did reference 0 to 200. And I looked at my total number of books that I had in each section, and I calculated how much time it took me from the 0 to 100 and the 100 to 200. And I gave myself an hour for every 50 books that I needed to look at in the collection. And this is because I physically have to scan the book to see when the last checkout was, or if there had been a checkout, and I needed time to inspect the book to see if any of the musty, if it was quality, and also if it was in good condition. And removing them from the system, blocking out the IDs, and transporting them does take a lot of time. So, with giving myself 5 hours um, per week with 50 books an hour, I realized that this is going to take me until January 2024. I did go ahead and make a plan, and I shared my plan with other Hawaii librarians on our Canvas, which is our learning management system, and I explained what I had done and why I had done it. And then I also gave them my timeline for weeding the rest of my collection. I also would like to share that of all the nonfiction books that I deselected from 0 to 200, none of those books had been checked out since our school went to its new library management system in 2015. So they hadn't been checked out for at least 7 years, none of the books. So these are my outcomes and reflection. First of all, this was a very time-consuming project. When I first considered doing this project, I thought that I could weed the entire collection, nonfiction, and I am so glad that I did not propose that on my project because it took me um, a lot of time just to do reference and 0 to 200. And now I know that I won't be done until January 2024. Um, Another reflection is that it's really important to have a destination for the weeded materials. I felt really lucky that we have the workplace readiness where the majority of the books could be sent, because it definitely would be difficult, take even more time to take carloads down to the Maui Friends of the Library, and then, definitely sad to see it in the dumpster. So I'm glad that the books are being recycled. After doing this project, I can really understand the cyclical nature of curation. As I'm weeding, I could see what needs to be updated. I could see what's worn. I could see what's popular. And so I feel like it does really help with understanding, getting to know my collection, and really understanding how curation works. Um, I will be able to look at circulation rates of nonfiction after I'm done, but I was able to put the graphic novels and the manga in one area where the reference section was just in the last 2 days, and do some dynamic shelving. And I can already see that seems like, based on my observation, we already have a little bit more checkout. And after the project is done, I'll be able to compare the checkout rates of the nonfiction before this aggressive weeding project and after. There's my picture of the graphic novels that used to be the reference area, and you can see I could do some dynamic shelving. Here are my references. I hope that you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for your time.